it's interesting to find out what this means, because this has gotten investors globally a bit nervous. Oil, for instance, has surged for the third straight session, where I'm talking both WTI and Brent prices, and that's perhaps the single important factor that can topple this party that's going on in global markets.
Absolutely. And I think David Lennox is joining us on the phone line to help us understand how deeply all of these developments could impact the oil market. He is joining us on the phone line. He's a senior resource analyst at Fact Profits. David, good afternoon. Thanks so much for taking our call. I guess the first question is fairly basic as to what you have made from an oil market perspective of the sort of two disconnected developments that have been going on. One, the tensions with Iran, and then the Saudi purge, as it's being called. How are you reading into that, keeping in mind the oil markets?
Certainly, if you have a look at the Saudi-Iran tensions, that's been going on for some time now. Both of those countries have been on opposite sides of a number of conflicts in and around the Middle East. However, the rhetoric has seemed to have stepped up a little bit, and we do think that with events that we're seeing happening first in Lebanon, and of course the purge that we're seeing in Saudi Arabia itself, and what that may bring in terms of new focuses on various aspects of the geopolitical, we think that the markets are now watching very closely, and we've seen some reaction in the oil prices over the last couple of days in terms of price increases. We think the markets are going to watch very closely now what's going to happen, especially in Saudi Arabia, to see if the new regime will bring with it a change in attitudes around the Middle East.
David, last week we were talking about oil prices, and at that point the talking point was about production cuts by the OPEC and how this will move the prices higher. Do these events accelerate that price up move? What are the near-term targets that you would keep in mind?
Look, at this stage we've kept our WTI price at $65 for year end and our Brent price at $67. So with the Brent price we're not far away. Primarily what we're looking at in terms of what will influence those prices going into the end of the year is certainly, yes, the OPEC and its allies keeping to the 32.5 million barrel ceiling, and perhaps at the upcoming 30 November OPEC meeting, extending the time out beyond the 31st of March. There's certainly key aspects that we will be looking for support in the oil price market. The other is we're watching very closely still what's happening with, firstly, US inventories, and they continue at this point in time to decline, and also what's happening with US domestic production. And unfortunately, we've seen US domestic production just continuing to rise gradually over the course of the last couple of months. So we see a whole mix of pressures on the oil price, but at this stage, on balance, we'd suggest we'd be very happy to keep our end-of-year price at around 65 for WTI and 67 for Brent.
The underlying trend, David, has been relatively bullish over the last several months now for oil. What is OPEC's thinking on this? Are we looking at a price of about $70? Is that what the OPEC is positioning for?
No, look, we think at this stage OPEC's not looking for an actual price to set. Otherwise, they could just go in and actually cut production, and that would significantly improve the price. We think all they want to do, and they've said this over many occasions, is they just want to stabilise the market and get the oil price away from those lows that we did see late in 2016, early this year. So with that in mind, OPEC has probably done a fairly successful job in terms of first complying. That's been a problem that organisation's had. Now that the market's comfortable with the compliance aspect of the OPEC ceiling, we will be now looking for them to perhaps go further ahead and increase the time that we will see for the expiry of the current agreement.
All right, David, appreciate you joining us to give us a sense on the oil markets. As always, great to hear your thoughts. That's David Lennox speaking on the upside on oil.